listening to the Secure AF podcast. And now your hosts, Jonathan Kimmitt and Tanner Shin.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us on another episode of the Secure AF podcast. I'll be your host today, Tanner, and I have with me Jonathan Kimmitt here, CISO alias. I don't know if you really need an intro to anybody who's listening at this point, but you care to intro who you are?
I'm me.
Yes, Sam.
Been up since 5 this morning, so I don't give any guarantees of what I might say throughout the rest of the podcast.
Okay. Well, then we'll go straight into it since this is going to make some people mad. Is SANS the overpriced dinosaur of cybersecurity training? And I'll expand it to forensics too.
Oh, are you asking me that direct question?
Yeah, is it?
I'm going to say no.
You're going to say no?
But it's a conversation I want to have. So
right.
I'm going to say no for me saying this, but it is a conversation I think we should have.
I think the number one thing that sticks out, it's not at all my only thing. My number one thing at this point is the price.
It is very expensive.
Very expensive.
Yes.
They want you to do continued education as well on a lot of their stuff. That also costs quite a bit. Well, I guess it depends on what you consider quite a bit. What's that?
I meet all my CPE requirements through my regular certifications. So it was easier when I was doing a SANS class every year.
Right.
Because that would count towards another SANS class,
right,
in terms of your previous. But I can generally meet my CPE requirements just like I do with my CISSP and all the normal stuff that I do throughout the year.
So I think there are certs that I consider to have much more valuable information in them for a fraction of the cost.
I would say that there are really good certs out there.
I'm going to give some examples of TCM Security. Probably going to mention them a lot because I really, really like what they're doing. I like their materials. I like their certs. I like the way they're doing their classes.
Sure.
If you said take side by side, what is it? The GIAC Penetration
GPEN.
GPEN.
Yeah.
If you said GPEN versus PNTP from TCM Security, I'm taking PNTP every single time. Just two identical resumes. That's the only thing that's a difference. I'm taking the guy with TCM, sir.
Really? So, I have my GPEN, but I don't have the TCM stuff. I've never seen their classes. I guess my question is, what about the certification? I get the cost.
Sure.
Absolutely. It's expensive. It's just had a friend of mine who went to SANS, and it was easily $12,000 by the end of the week. It's housing, that's the cost, that's the certification test cost, it's food. It was expensive. It was about $12,000.
Yeah.
And that is really expensive. When I was taking my SANS courses, it wasn't that expensive, but it was still pricey. And I was paying them for them myself. It wasn't my job paying for them. But what is it outside of price that you see as a TCM that pushes you that direction?
So I've got a lot of thoughts on this. They're very slow to update, and this is one of the biggest things that I think even OSCP struggled with this. I think they're getting better, but OSCP really struggled with this to a point where I quit suggesting people to get OSCP.
Yeah.
They've really overhauled the cert since then. I don't share the same opinions that I used to on it of it being irrelevant. But I think that SANS struggles with that, where they just have a giant organization. They've got boards. They have people who have to spend this time making the training, and it's not quick or easy to make. And some of these guys are really good too. And so they're making these trainings, and it maybe takes them a year, 6 months to make it. And then it takes 6 months to get it approved, or a year? How long? Quite a while, right?
Oh, probably. I could definitely see it taking more than a year to get everything start to finish.
So you've got a material that's a year and a half old. And how long is that class going to go for? A couple of years, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So let's say it goes for 2 years.
But not very many.
But at a point, you've got 4-year-old material. And whenever you're talking about penetration testing, red teaming, offensive, even blue teaming, it's 6 months. Everything's different. Everything's different.
I agree with that. I mean, I get that.
And I
But-
just don't think that they have the ability to be agile enough to keep up with like 0 point security or even OffSec or any of these guys. Anti-Siphon. Anti-Siphon's really cool, by the way. Shout out those guys.
Yeah.
So one of the things is I could not find any really. They were very light on their C2 frameworks that they covered. I couldn't find anything that was covering like Sliver or Havoc, and they're taking over huge market shares of what's actually there.
Yeah.
And from my understanding, they're pretty light on what they do, even with Cobalt Strike, which is the only thing they really mention.
Right.
And that seems like they're just really, really legacy. They're still really heavy in Metasploit, which some people, they're really making Metasploit cutting edge, but I don't think they are. I think they're taking very out of the.
And see, we didn't use Metasploit in my GPEN class.
Yeah.
So, I mean, here is where I'm coming from on GPEN now. Understand, I'm a CISO. I'm not a pen tester. I started my OSCP in, I think I looked back, it was 2017. I worked on it for a couple of years, because, family, kids, work.
Yeah.
After I took the test a couple of times and did not pass, I decided to try the GPEN.
Mhm.
So I went to the GPEN, or I went to SANS, and I went to GPEN. That was when I went to DC. So it was a good class. I enjoyed the class. I learned things from the class that I did not learn in OSCP. I learned stuff in OSCP I didn't learn in GPEN. I felt fairly comfortable gathering the pieces that I didn't know and learning them quickly. And then I went and took the test and passed the test and, got my GPEN. So I would agree with you that they're not as agile. But I would like to counter that with they do provide strong fundamentals.
So one thing that I have actually noticed, and this is kind of what made me really start going down this rabbit hole, is I've worked with quite a few engineers that have other SANS certs, including GPEN, and they didn't have a level of skill that I expected. And it seemed to come down to, I think that they're testing a lot of memory and a little less on your exact skills. And I know that one's going to be really hard to quantify, but it seems like it's a lot more of like, if you have good indexing skills and good memory,
okay,
then you can probably pass GPEN.
I would agree with that. The indexing on it, I mean, there are hands-on things you have to do.
Yeah.
But it's still a proctored exam. It's not like OSCP where it's like, here's 5 machines, go.
Yeah.
It is a proctored exam. You have questions, you have an attack environment to go do stuff. But I would agree with that. There is a section on it that's memorization. And again, I came from a slightly different perspective because I had OSCP, literally the year before. I mean, I was working on it. And so when I walked in fact, when I did the test, there was a lot of things that I didn't memorize because I didn't know those tools. I wasn't using those tools. So it wasn't like I memorized the tools. I got to the question and the hands-on was like, okay, well, I generally know how to do this. And I did it and was successful at it. But I could see that. I mean, I could see that it is memorization based, and it's not even actually memorization based. It's index based because you get to carry a stack of books into your test, as a reference, and you have to know the material well enough to be able to index it and to reference it and go back and find that reference material or the content. But the class, I enjoyed the class because I personally like the structured side of the learning, the boot camps. I enjoy doing boot camps.
Right.
Number one, I'm not focusing on other stuff. I'm not focusing on my family, not focusing on work. I'm not focusing on any of that stuff. I am there to just absorb.
Right.
I rarely leave the hotel. I go get food. I go to my hotel room and I dive into the material because I want to learn it and grow and expand over it. That's why you're there. And if I'm paying for it, I want as much as I possibly can get. So I always felt like for me, they had the content, and understand the GPEN is just one of my certs. My other certs, my GLA, my GSNA, things like that.
Yeah.
They're not that type of cert. I mean, they're not that hands-on. They're more policy-based, more, content-based, memorization, the compliance and whatever. So it is slightly different in the different certs. But I could definitely see that the GPEN does not necessarily have the latest tools, doesn't have the latest tactics and techniques. I would not say, and I'm going to say this even just from my point of view, that somebody who goes in to do the GPEN, or even people going to do the OSCP, they are still beginners. They might have a set of skill sets, maybe a set of tools that they know, but they're just beginners in being a pen tester. I am not a pen tester. I will never be a pen tester. That's not my role. I have a few of the concepts that I learned over the years that I felt like helped me be a better CISO. But what you do every day, I'd never do that. I mean, that my brain doesn't work that way when I'm going in to do that mindset. So I think me taking that class for what I needed it to be was perfect. But I could definitely see if somebody comes out of that class and thinks they're going to be a pen tester, they're not. There's so much more they have to learn. And if I was going to look at something else, because I think TCM security, one of their big benefits, and even OSCP at this point, is their ongoing labs, the training, the growth, and people can really learn the skill sets and hone those skill sets in that continuing training that they're providing.
Yeah. One of the other things that I had thought about is that it seems to me that the majority of their information is wider than deep.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think you leave without knowing things that are a little more important than if you took something that was a little more etched in.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I think that part of that is because of the student. Perfect example. So during the last day, that's the activity day of whatever cert you're doing, the hands-on, whatever. And because, I'm pretty boring, so I would come out of class, I would go eat, I'd go to my hotel room, and I'd get into the books. And I wasn't making my index. A lot of people will do that. They'll go and make their index that night. I didn't do that. I went in and I'd go back over the content because you're going through hundreds of slides in a single day. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of slides. You're not going to capture everything. So I was going through it and I found this extra little piece and I was reviewing it. It was fascinating to me. And I won't give it away because of the whole sharing thing. But I was reading through it. It was an extra piece on one of the sections, under the slide. They have extra information. I was reading it and it's like, well, that's interesting to me. And so I went and practiced it. It was strictly just for the fun of it.
Yep.
The last day, I actually had to use that. And I jumped on it. So everyone was doing part of the last activity. And me being the manager of the group or the CISO or that type of person in that group, it was like, okay, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Everybody was doing it. And I was like, okay, well, I just managed my job out of the way. So I just jumped in and started doing something, playing. And had I not read that extra piece, had I not get into that, then I wouldn't have found what I found so quickly. And that led us to the next level of the thing. So what I think when we're dealing with this content, there is so much content. There's no way you're going to get all that content, even as broad it is or as thin it is, you're never going to catch everything. But if you're a good student and you take that content and you start diving into it, I think there's value there. And the value may of it just be from the learning aspect, not even just the content, the fact that you can learn that quickly and pick it up and go, I understand that and move forward. I mean, it's like the CISSP. This is one of those things where we talk about the CISSP.
Well, I have similar feelings towards CISSP.
But I mean, they always talk about it's 5 miles wide, 2 inches deep. And the CISSP was actually my very first certification, right? And that's usually the third or fourth or last certification that IT people get. But I took it and I passed. But what it led me to is there were certain things that it was really interesting to me in the CISSP that I learned that I didn't know. I mean, there was concepts that I'd never dealt with before. But from that point forward, as I went and did more classes, more training, more learning of all kinds, not just SANS courses, but all kinds of training, I went to go make those 2-inch deep things 6 inches deeper, 8 inches deeper, a foot deeper. I had a breadth of stuff that I, covered, and then I made each one of these deeper. Some things I did less than others. I kind of dove into privacy and compliance and policies, and because I enjoy that stuff. So that went along with my position as a CISO. So I kind of focused on those and less on the technical side. But even the technical, I went and grew more. I mean, I did the OSCP.
Yeah, but is that anything to do with the CERT, or is that just what you did? Is that really any different than how people read a blog about something and dive in and start reading about it?
You're right. It's not. So all a CERT is, and I tell people this all the time, a CERT is a verification that you have a minimal amount of knowledge from that structured bit of information.
Yep.
But I would say, because a lot of people rag on like the CEH. First of all, I don't ever want to say negative things for someone who wants to go out and learn. And if they want to go learn the CEH, absolutely 100%, go for it. If someone goes out and gets a certification and they're proud of it, hey, I am too.
Yeah.
I'm never going to take a cert or anybody's progress on something and demean it. So,
But if they come to you and they say, what cert should I get? It might not be the top of your list, right?
no, actually, CEH is one of them.
It's pretty up there for you?
Because here's how I tell it to people. I want them to get, just like I did, I want to get a broad piece of information.
Yeah.
Go get Sec Plus. Even if you don't go get the book and read Sec Plus, because a broad amount of content that's there, a lot of bodies of knowledge. You're going to find stuff you enjoy. Great. That'll kind of guide you where you want to go in the security world. But then I need them, for my world, to understand the basics, the jargon, the definitions of attacks. I would not send somebody to an OSCP or something like that, but go to CEH. You're going to get a few little nuggets.
I don't hate CEH at all. I think that CEH's big problem is the name. The problem with the CEH name is that it is Certified Ethical Hacker. And a lot of people come into it with the impression that they're going to leave there just a full-blown hacker. And I don't know that that's always the case or ever the case. It still has valuable information and it's a valuable course. If it had a different name, people would not hate on it so much.
Well, I don't know. I've got an earful of people that just, and part of it is the hosting body.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that what they did was good or bad. I don't know. I don't know all the pieces to it. What I'm saying is, if someone goes and gets a CEH, they have gotten that content in their head. And I think that's a good thing. Learning across the board is a good thing in my world. So learn and grow and get better. Now, the CEH, is that going to make you a hacker? No. Is it going to put you down a road? Maybe. I mean, if they enjoy it and they go, hey, I want to learn more about this, then absolutely. Let's take it down the road and go see where it goes. But I will say this. There was things that I learned because I took my CEH cold. So I was working on my OSCP. I had failed the second test and I was pretty down. The reason why I failed, by the way, for anybody that's taken OSCP, time management. That is a huge key to that test, is managing your time. You got 24 hours. If you don't manage it, if you don't do that well, you're going to get to hour 22 and 23 and you just won't care anymore. So time management is critical. I didn't understand that. This was a long time ago. Anyway, so I did the OSCP. I failed it and I was really down. I mean, it was like, I'm not going to get this. How can I be a good CISO if I can't get these pieces? I mean, I felt like I was a good CISO, but I wanted to grow. So I decided to go take the CEH cold. I went and got the book, the gold book, and I flipped through it, and I'm like, I'm just going to go take it. So I went and took it. And it was a mental thing for myself. I wanted to see if I could pass it.
Yeah.
Passed the test, got it. Everything was good. Had to pay extra since I didn't do the training class.
But it's kind of whack.
I agree. I don't agree with some of the costing and stuff, but I took it and I felt better about myself. For me, that was valuable. That was worth the, I don't know, $800 or whatever it was. But there was pieces in the CEH that I didn't know from the OSCP that I learned.
Right.
To me,
OSCP is more pointed.
it is.
Yeah.
It is. So I went to GPEN later, and I did that, and I learned stuff that wasn't OSCP. And I learned something from everything. And that was, somebody told me that years ago that even if you take a very low-level course, like a low-level IT help desk course or something, try to find something you learn from it. You know, you can learn something from anybody and from anyone teaching you or anything you're learning from. So I pulled from that valuable stuff. I still pull stuff from my GPEN. You know, again, to me, it was fundamentals, I guess, more than anything. You know, kind of give me that structure. And now that I've been doing it a couple of years, you know, being a CISO for a lot of years now, I want to go back and finish my OSCP. It's different now. Everything has changed. But that was one of my goals for this year, is to actually go do the OSCP course again.
Yeah.
And finish it.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I know that you and I have talked about OSCP versus the TCM stuff. For me, I want to finish it.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah, I know, I get that. There's a lot of good certs out there other than just TCM. TCM's awesome.
Sure.
Great company backing it too. But yeah, there's lots. I mean,
and the thing about TCM, I'll tell you, one thing that I like about TCM is the company itself is really good to work with. We reached out to them. They supported they gave us some prizes to give out to people.
They did.
And they didn't have to. And we reached out and says, hey, we're really big in the community. We're really pushing. That's what this conference that we're doing is. And they were like, absolutely, we want to be part of it. And, you know, they really supported the students and they really supported the conference. So absolutely, I think TCM is a great company. And honestly, I think the cert is probably great. I know that we had an engineer, I think, had gone through that very early on when I got here. He was working through it. And so I was talking to him one day about it, and they had a slightly different way of presenting at the end than what OSCP did, what I had to do for OSCP. And I thought it was a good way of doing it.
It's more realistic.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I thought the way they made you present that was it's a valuable lesson to learn from the training.
Yeah.
You get good report skills out of OCP. Don't get me wrong. They're big on the report. You have 24 hours to do it. But I think the way TCM did it, from a CISO perspective, I like that better.
As somebody who has to hire and train pen testers, I mean, I like that.
Yeah.
I like the way they do it better as well.
Yeah.
I think it's really, really nailing what it goes.
Right.
But pivoting back to SANS, though, I will say, SANS name carries a lot of weight.
It does.
Any of the GIAC whatever certs, they carry a lot of weight.
Yeah.
Now, whether the weight is super deserved or not is kind of where I'm at with it. I think there are other certs that are better, outright better, and they're cheaper. That being said, I feel the same way about CISSP. Although CISSP isn't $1 million. But I feel the same way about CISSP, that it's not the best cert in the world. It's good, maybe, but it carries a lot of weight.
It does.
So would I recommend that people go get SANS certs? I would say if your employer pays.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a good way of saying it. I am proud of my SANS certs because of the work I did for them. I think, and even going back to the CISSP, I appreciate the CISSP. It was my first cert, of course. I appreciate for what it is. It's a skills and experience cert.
Sure.
So you got to go take the test, which is, at least in my time, was an intensive test, 6 hours. It's a little different nowadays. And you got to show the experience.
Yeah.
You know, your 5 years or 4 years with a degree, you know, is different combinations. And what I like about the CISSP is, well, okay. Now let me put a background you may not know. I wrote part of the training for the CISSP.
Yeah.
So when
Slightly biased.
well, no, but I'll tell you when I went in, no, this is not the test.
Yeah.
This is the training that is provided for the CISSP from ISC2.
Right.
I helped rewrite a good portion of the CISSP training. There's different bodies of knowledge. And I really tried to make it based off being a CISO in the security world that we deal with. So I think, and I am biased in this case, I think that training is very realistic now. It was harder before.
Yeah.
But I think it's valuable. And I think the CISSP itself, for me, when somebody tells me they have a CISSP, I know that they have a minimum level of knowledge in the security world of what we do. And I know where I can talk to them at. If somebody doesn't have it, it doesn't mean they're stupid. It doesn't mean they're not experienced, but I don't know that.
Sure. I guess one of the things that would be my main gripe with it is actually, it's not necessarily the knowledge in it or the goal of it or anything. It's that it's misunderstood. And it has become the number one thing that recruiters and large companies and everything are asking for. And it's essentially, if this is a security role, you need CISSP.
Yeah.
I don't care that much if a pen tester or a SOC analyst has it.
No, I agree. The CISSP has a very specific role.
And I think that's maybe where I get hung up on it, is that it's really the companies that are hiring and everything.
Well, and I'm going to say the hiring process is broken.
Yes.
Yeah, hiring processes across the board are broken.
Also, if you agree with me and you're saying, yeah, you know what, I think SANS is kind of overrated and there's some other really good certs out there, and you're somebody who's hiring in your company and your company still has those as a requirement, go do something about it.
Sure.
Like, it's on us as people.
Well, yeah. Hiring. And of course, I think it's on us for across the board hiring.
Yeah.
We were talking about, so we are hiring a SOC analyst for here at the office. And I had gotten out on a local Discord server and was telling people, I was like, hey, we're hiring this. They asked some questions. I answered their questions. And a couple of people came back. She goes like, oh my God, you're actually telling us about the job. I'm like, yeah, I want good people and I want good security professionals. And they were just so flabbergasted that I was, number one, answering questions about the job, about the salary range, and I was being honest. That I wasn't giving them inside information and anything. I thought it was, correct information for what they needed to know. But so many people came back because they're so disgruntled in this hiring process that it's terrible. It's a terrible process that we're going through to hire people. And I think part of that terribleness is the fact that you have a lot of people who are hiring positions that they are completely unqualified to hire for. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the book that I'm writing, the CISO handbook, I've got a whole segment in there of how to hire a CISO. Because if you take an IT person, let's say a CTO or a CIO, or even a non-IT person, let's say a CFO or a CEO, they are not qualified. They don't know what to look for in a CISO. So I put a whole section in the book that just talks about, this is how you search for a CISO. This is how you bring people in and, interview them for a CISO role, because a lot of people don't know how to do that. So I think the biggest problem with IT security roles out there is that we have people that are trying to hire IT security people. They are not qualified to understand. They don't know what it takes to be an IT security professional. So that breaks a lot. So what do? It's like, well, I don't have the skills. I mean, the person hiring doesn't have the skills to know if this person knows what they're talking about or not. So they go to that common denominator of a cert. And they go, well, if they have a CEH and a GPEN and an OSCP and a CISSP and this and that, apparently that is what they can do. I mean, they can do the job. That's not always true. Yeah. A cert doesn't mean you can do the job.
Maybe you're a professional student.
Yeah, exactly. The cert also doesn't mean you can't do the job, and I've had a lot of people say that. It's like, oh, you got CEH. Well, you're an idiot and that's stupid and you shouldn't. And I think that that's crap as well, because they may have gotten it and they are completely qualified to do the job.
Yeah.
I think that going through resumes, the way people do resumes, and it's really interesting on the Discord, we have people who put up their resumes and are getting help. I mean, it's like, okay, this is what I would put in there. And it's amazing. Everyone's got an opinion over what you should put in there and what you shouldn't. I'll tell you some of my opinions. I like seeing that someone has fast food or retail experience in their resume.
Yeah.
If they worked at McDonald's, if they worked at Walmart, they worked at Sears, I know Sears is still around. But if that's on your resume, that tells me something. That says you've got some front-facing experience with customers.
Yeah.
That is extremely useful to me in a security position. If you don't have that, I'm not saying you're not qualified, but when I'm looking and I see fast food, it's like, this is great. But I'll listen to other people like, no, I don't want to see fast food on there. That's completely useless to the job. And it's not. And it's a soft skill, and there's a lot of different things there. So it's really interesting to listen to the different pieces of that. But when you write your resume, you're writing it for your job, and that job may require this stuff, your different certs of different kinds. But I think the why they're requiring it is because the people hiring it are unqualified to hire the position.
That's certainly a big part of it.
So they're just reaching out for whatever they can. It's like, well, I don't know what else to put. We're going to put CISSP and GPEN and OSCP and CEH for an entry-level SOC analyst.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. If you're getting those certs and you're a SOC analyst, you shouldn't be a SOC analyst. You should be
entry level. Yeah.
Yeah, entry level. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Entry level
should be a detection engineer or something.
Exactly. So I think there's a lot of pieces broken. I don't think it's the cert's fault. I don't think it's the cert body's fault. I think we just have a lot of problems. I will say SANS is expensive.
Yep.
I wish it was not that expensive, because I would still be taking SANS courses. I just can't afford them anymore. And I love learning.
Isn't that kind of crazy though? What's that? I mean, you're a chief information security officer. You're not. How if you were saying, I just can't afford them. How is anybody, like, how is a SOC analyst? How is somebody who just wants to learn this stuff? It's clear that their whole business model is businesses with excess money to spend will come by this no matter what. And I think that's kind of crappy. Sorry, fans.
I get it. I mean, it's the insurance model to an extent, but they always fill their classes.
It's true.
I mean,
that's because they are that name. They are absolutely coming from a networking background. They're like Cisco. I mean, Cisco and networking is everybody has Cisco certs, no matter what networking equipment you're working on.
Yep. But and I'll even give them credit. Those people who go and get their, maybe not CCNA, but the CCIEs and all the higher, they know stuff.
Yes.
Maybe not. They may not be the best, but I know that the tests themselves are enough to. If you had to know your stuff to pass them.
Yes.
So I'll give them credit. Those people that have that, okay, they're smarter than I am, at least in networking.
Yeah. 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 No, it's definitely a solid point. Yeah. So if you were to, I guess, let's say for somebody who wants to get into security, they maybe have 5 years of IT experience that want to kind of move into security, not necessarily a role, but they want to get into security. Maybe their end goal is to be a CISO. What should they start at? What should they do? Should they go to SANS certs, or
no?
What should they do?
My typical answer is, if you are IT and you want to get into security, you have to have a foundation of security knowledge. Go do a Sec Plus. It don't have to do the training. There are boot camps you can do it. If you like that, great, go for it. But get you the book, if nothing else. Get the book, read through it. If you're serious about it, you can sit down with a gold book or a Sec Plus book and go through it and learn the jargon, learn the definitions, learn the concepts. If you can go take the test, or even if you just do the practice test, whatever, if you can go to those, take that test, and you're comfortable with that knowledge, if you have absorbed it enough to you go, I kind of like this stuff, and I kind of like this piece here, and this piece here, and this piece here. I don't really like this piece. No one likes encryption except for those 3 people. If you look across that broad spectrum of security knowledge that's covered in the Sec Plus or the CISSP or whatever, and you go, this is fun, I enjoy this, great. That's your starting point. Then I usually tell people to go get their CEH because I need them to understand at least the concepts of the attacks.
Okay.
If you don't know the basics of the attacks, then you don't know the kind of security controls you need to implement. You may not be the hacker, you may not be a hacker, but you need to know the concepts because you need to understand when you're talking to someone about this stuff, what you need to do to protect against it. So you go get your CEH. So Sec Plus, then CEH. And then for me, after you get that, you've got a really good foundation. You've got kind of this broad spectrum knowledge of security, plus this broad spectrum surface layer knowledge of the attacks. Now, what do you want to do? If you want to be a SOC person because you love searching through events and searching through stuff and putting the story together and figuring out where the attacks are, great. Let's go that direction. If you love being that sysadmin where you're configuring the devices, fine. Let's go get you some firewall certs. You go learn the firewalls and build that stuff. If you want to be a CISO, don't just go somewhere else. If you want to be a compliance and policy person, come on, let's do it. You will know what you want to do. If you've done your Sec Plus or your CEH, that gives you a broad understanding of, hey, I like this stuff over here, then go that direction. And then you can start getting into more specific search or training or experience to be successful at that.
I feel that it's also worth a shout out in this instance to plug TryHackMe.
Yes.
I really, really like TryHackMe. A lot of people say Hack the Box. I don't think Hack the Box is nearly as effective at real training. I think Hack the Box is very cool and very fun. You can learn some cool stuff.
Yes.
But I think if you're hour for hour spent, I think you are much more pointed to your learning in TryHackMe.
I would agree with that. I mean, I've done Hack the Box. I've done a little bit of TryHackMe. Okay, I'll put it this way. I would much, for me, and for a lot of people that I know, I would much rather them do something like TryHackMe or Hack the Box from scratch, if they didn't have any other skills, than just go set up a home lab and try stuff.
Yeah.
Because
Both are valuable, but yeah, I agree.
I think there needs to be a little bit of structure in the beginning.
Yeah.
If you can get a little bit of structure and you can build, I mean, I'll tell you, so I'm working with my kids right now on algebra. And my wife doesn't want to teach them algebra. And I love teaching. I did tutoring in college on algebra and calculus and Diffie and stuff. And I love doing that. But one of the things that I figured out many years ago when I started tutoring is, let's say you're on chapter 7 and they can't do it. That means they really can't do chapter 6 and chapter 5 and chapter 4. They didn't pick up those pieces from there. And I think hacking, or at least the stuff that I know, is built on that. If you know the foundation and you've learned these concepts, then you learn the tools, then you learn the exploits, and then you learn the tactics. So if you're doing something, if you want to be that person, you got to have a little bit of structure in the beginning and grow from there. If you just, some people are savants. They're great. They figure it out. It's just, it comes naturally to them. But most people need to have that structure.
Yeah. To be good. Yeah.
To be good.
Yeah. Because what's interesting is there is a level that you can do where, like what we saw with the Conti ransomware leaks, whenever all their documentation, their tools leaked out, what we learned is that these were not necessarily, some of them were, but they were not necessarily people who were experts. They were not necessarily somebody who really knew cybersecurity.
Right.
They were somebody who had a basic computer understanding.
Yep.
That could follow instructions.
Sure.
And it was very well documented of do this, do this, do this, do this, run this script, run this script.
Right.
And so it's interesting that you can get to a certain level by just learning what you need to follow and following it.
And honestly, we're getting flagged that we're running out of time, so we'll have to hook this, faster. But I will say, it's not hard to break stuff. But that's very different. What we're talking about, from at least what I'm talking about, is becoming a security professional.
Yep.
Doing the job that we do, not just going out there and breaking stuff and hurting people, hurting systems, hurting networks. So those sorts of things, we are talking about slightly different things in some cases. You can just go out and learn to break software. And a lot of people do.
I love it. I do.
Yeah. But for those people who want to be security professionals, they may not be that person. They can go do that. It doesn't mean you can't be a great security professional.
Yeah.
That's where I think having that structure to build into learning these skill sets is really critical.
So certs are still good. Deployment learning is still good. SANS is overpriced. If your employer wants you to go to SANS, do it.
I think that there is value in SANS.
Yeah.
If you can find the value in SANS, I think it's worthwhile. And I'm going to say that about any training out there.
Those are still trainings that are a waste of time.
Oh, okay. I'm going to say with most good trainings out there, if there's a job that you want, a position that you need, people you want to be around, and they expect to have that SANS training and you can afford it or you can get your work to pay for it, I think there's value there, because it's not just about the training, it's about all those other aspects. Would I send somebody brand new to SANS? No. I think the value of SANS comes with some experience. And if you know how to use it. Are there other trainings that I would send new people to first? Yes. And then I did. When I did my new staff comes in for, when I used to run the security team before, I would have them get other certs first. And they had to work themselves up to the point where I would send them to a SANS. SANS is expensive. Also, There's a lot of people that leave SANS on day 3. They just get up and walk out because there's so much content so quickly. So I would not want anyone in my teams to ever walk away from a SANS training course. It's too expensive. $10,000 is not something you just walk away from. Some people do it, and I think they're crazy. I pushed through and made sure that I got as much as I could out of it.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think there is value. If you can find value in it, it's worth it.
Okay.
It is expensive. I would not say that was my first option for people right out of the gate.
Okay. All right. I think that's fair. Well, thanks for humoring me on me wondering if SANS is an overpriced dinosaur. Can we use this topic? I don't know. It might be a little hot. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, I think we could use that.
Use the topic. All right. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us today. And that's been another episode of the Secure AF Podcast.
Thanks, everybody.
The Secure AF Podcast is a production of Alias Cybersecurity. Visit us online at aliascybersecurity.com. All rights reserved.